Well, back to the news of the day now. A number of decorated veterans endorsing Donald Trump today, saying the mogul has what they're looking for in a commander-in-chief.
We do not need any more bureaucratic leadership from Washington, D.C. We need true leadership from the top. Mr. Trump has never failed in anything because he listens to his advisors, he listens to his people.
What we need is some fresh thinking, innovative approaches, and strong leadership.
Joining me now, Randy Weingarten, current president of American Federation of Teachers and a Hillary Clinton surrogate. I played some of that sound because that is a theme that the Donald Trump campaign really wanted to put forward today as we take in the news cycle of the last 24 hours. And it presents an interesting question for Hillary Clinton and her supporters. So why do you think she represents new thinking and new leadership when she's been part of what some would call the establishment for so long?
So, you know, when you fight for 40 years, as she has, for women and children, that fight is a virtuous fight. And what has happened is that those issues are issues that we must solve today. What I think is going on is that Donald Trump has never been involved in any positive way in the politics of our country. Look what just happened in terms of the birtherism today. After 7 years of fueling this controversy, today he says he's not going to fuel it anymore and then blames Hillary Clinton. If that kind of way of acting, if lying was an Olympic event, he would have gotten a gold medal for it.
So what we've heard from the Trump campaign is, though, if you look at Hillary Clinton's record, she hasn't produced the results that the American people, and I'm paraphrasing what they would say, would want. The real change in a variety of different ways. So that, regardless of her 40 years, what do you think she brings as far as new leadership to the table?
So what she brings is a real understanding of what people need, and in the roles that she has had in terms of creating health care for children after 9/11, making sure that the people on the pile had health care. She's never been president of the United States, but she has an understanding and a passion for how you connect policy to making it real for real people. What I've watched with Donald Trump, I just saw those vets who really, vets in our country are heroes. But when he was in New York, what he did to vets who were on the streets on Fifth Avenue, he told them to go away.
If what you're saying is so true, though, why are the polls so close?
Well, I always assumed that the polls were going to be close. Look, this is a transformational election, just like the last one where you had an African-American male running. Here you have a female running for president of the United States. I assume from the get-go the polls will be close.
Because of that issue, because she's a woman?
Absolutely. But
really?
The difference,
Why?
and she never talks about that because, you know, it is when you are breaking barriers, there's a lot of issues about that. But the second issue is this. People want change. They want to make sure we have good jobs, not just for the 1%, but for everyone. And let's just look. And this is the difference between Trump, who's a showman and a con man, and somebody like Hillary, who is very steady and very focused on results. Take what Moody's just said about their two plans. What Moody's said
and
is
we're talking about the job plans.
The job plans. Her plan would create 10 million jobs, and his plan would put us into a recession. And who said this from Moody's? Somebody who was John McCain's advisor.
But she's not talking about jobs. Today, she actually talked about the birther issue in her own speech, and I'm curious about that.
Actually,
because one of the things that she also has mentioned over the last week or so is and this is in the context of the campaign as we look at it in the totality, calling Donald Trump and some of his supporters racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic. Now the switch is to calling them birthers. So if those accusations about Donald Trump haven't stuck and he continues to rise in the polls, why do you believe the birther issue will be detrimental to him?
Actually, the bottom line here is someone is not fit to run for the presidency of the United States of America.
But that argument's not deterring voters, right?
When they use lying as their currency and fueling crisis through conspiracies. If Donald Trump wants to show the American people who he has been as a business person, then release your taxes.
Well, that's something we're going to be talking about with the Trump supporter as well.
But in terms of Hillary and her plans, right after the Democratic Convention, yesterday, she talked about economics. She talked about how the connection is between economics and education. So I think part of this is that when you saw the Democratic convention and the Republican convention, when both of them were out there for an hour or so talking about her plans, you saw a huge run up in the polls.
But that's not what's happening now. The reality now is that the race is tightening. So I want to talk to you a little bit, if we can, about some of the key issues, because you do point out we have to talk about some of the substance of the campaign. One of them is education.
And I think you're right that she doesn't get that what happens is that her plans that she's talked about, they don't actually break through.
Well, they don't break through when you call your opponent racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, and Islamophobic, because that's the soundbite that's going to be played over and over again. So let's break that. Let's talk a little bit about education. You've been rumored potentially as the Secretary of Education for Hillary Clinton. Okay, well, we'll hold you to that in case we see your name in the announcement later on. Some say, though, Hillary Clinton would take a real pivot from Barack Obama when it comes to education policies in our country, and I'm curious what you think about that. What would a pivot from Barack Obama be? What would an improvement from Barack Obama be?
What Hillary Clinton has talked about, and what I have seen her do as senator from New York and as First Lady of the United States of America, is that she understands education from pre-K through higher ed.
So what would be the change?
The change is you have to make sure that the teachers have the tools and conditions they need to do their jobs. 90% of the kids in the United States of America go to public schools. We need to make sure that the investments, the smart investments, are there. So, for example, what Hillary has talked about forever, and finally, America is doing this, although not nearly as well as the other countries that outcompete us. Early childhood education.
So if Barack Obama wasn't able to establish some of these policies in the way that perhaps you would like to see, why do you believe Hillary Clinton can do it?
What's happening now is in the last couple of years, Barack Obama has actually started working on early childhood education. But remember, we are in the worst recession since the Great Depression. And frankly, a recession that was caused by the trickle-down economics that Donald Trump is now proposing. So you're saying it would in some way build off the foundation of what Barack Obama has established, which brings us back full circle to the conversation about whether or not she's bringing in new ideas to solve the problem. Actually, there's certain things that would build on the foundation, and there's certain things that are important that are evidence-based. And where she differs from Barack Obama on education is that she leans into what works to actually help all kids succeed. And what that does in terms of K-12 is take a school I was in this week, a career tech ed school, which now has a new pathway for public service, for public safety. So kids in ninth grade are starting to learn how to be police officers, firefighters, and EMTs. This is new. For years, people kept saying, oh no, we just want all kids to go to college. Hillary has now said, wait a second, we need to have many pathways, many opportunities, many choices for kids. And so what's happening is that we need to do these kind of things. She's talked about CTE. She's talked about building infrastructure far before Donald Trump did. So it looks like you're saying that that would be something, a new idea that she'd continue. I'd like to have you back on the program to talk more about education. And we'd like to, of course, talk to Hillary Clinton about it as well. So maybe you could help us out with that, Randy. It's great to have you on the program. Thank you very much. Greg?
Well, so we just